So let me ask you a question. If I'm sitting there with you and Nathan, I say, hey, I need these 10 cambros of tomatoes prepped and I need it done in the next 30 minutes. I need you to get that done. Or if I say, hey, Nathan, I need these cambros of tomatoes prepped. There's 10 of them. It's been pretty slow. So if you can just have them done by the end of the day. Which one of those is going to cause people to work faster, right?
Oh,
we're buying products and we're putting our money on the shelves. And here's the thing. Our managers, without a proper system to do their ordering properly, will always default to over ordering. But here's the other part of it too. The biggest complaint I hear is, welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Scott, multi-location owner for almost 20 years. And now we help restaurant owners increase their sales, profits, and have more freedom with their time. So if you're listening today, it is because you want to make more money in your restaurant in the next 7 days. So the topic today is 5 money models that'll put more cash in your bank account in the next 7 days. So Nathan's here with me. So let's dive in together. So the number one thing I have here is pricing, because there's almost nothing you can do that will increase your bottom line faster than changing your pricing. Now, the downside of that is as soon as I pricing, everyone goes, oh my God, I don't want to increase my pricing. Because you're afraid of, am I going to lose customers? Am I going to, have people go away? That might reduce my sales. But here is the reality, is that no matter what you do, you cannot outmarket, you cannot outwork improper pricing, right? Because if you are not priced where the market is, or at least right around that, if you're significantly below, your cost of goods is going to be higher, your labor is going to be higher, you're going to have to work harder, you break even, you're going to have to do so much more sales just to make the same amount of money. So at the end of the day, why work that much harder for less money? Some of the richest people in the world, they just literally wouldn't work for less money than that. So that's why they do higher price things. And so for you, at the end of the day, what point would it be to have an extremely busy restaurant and be broke? Is there really a point to that? Not really. So let's dive into pricing a little bit. So a couple ways that I like to think about it. Number one, you got to figure out what people are selling in your vicinity around that price point and say, hey, am I at least within the ballpark of what they're doing? You could be 10% above or below. No one is going to notice it. That's a really, really easy way to do it. And anytime we've done this with our clients, we notice that people are often $2 or $3 on a similar menu item below what their competitors are, because their competitors all adjust prices, but they didn't, and they've been holding back on it. So that is number one. And the other way that we really want to think about this is if you don't actually know what your menu items cost to know whether that's within line based on your pricing, that is the next thing to do. Now, costing your menu is extremely valuable, but it also takes time. And the focus of today is making more money in the next 7 days. So here's what you can do. Literally take your top 3 or 4 best sellers and literally just cost those items. And that will give you an idea of where it is. But if they're your top 3 or 4 best sellers, even just switching those prices to make sure they're where they should be, that will have a disproportionate effect on your entire sales because they are the heaviest hitters. So even starting there. So that is 2 ways with pricing that we can start to change things and make changes fast. So Nathan, hit us with some other tips around pricing.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing about pricing. I love what you said about, costing those main menu items. And that is absolutely where you should start. I would say it's even easier to do a very simple market analysis. So Andrew, you mentioned it already. Are we charging what we should be charging for these products? Is our pricing right? So, we can take the time and we can do the food costing and make sure that our profit margin is correct. But if your item on your menu, if it costs you too much to make it and your pricing needs to be adjusted to a certain point, that's when you absolutely can price yourself out of the market. $36 for a burger when everybody else is charging, 22. Listen, you're not going to sell that item, plain and simple. So, often where I start is what I call a market analysis, where we look at, what are other similar restaurants with similar value proposition. So, quality of product, experience, what can they expect? What are they charging for particular items? And this is a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses, but here's the thing about what a market analysis will tell you. It will tell you what people are willing to pay. And that's what we need to look at. So yes, cost the menu items, but also do the market analysis, because if you have to charge $36 and the market tells you you can't, guess what? You can't sell that burger the way it's designed. It has to change. Your pricing has to change. It's a model that is not going to work.
100%.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing is, we just have to look at what other people are doing, because, even go to some of the busiest places. What are they doing a little bit differently? If they can, almost every time someone does this, they come back and say, wow, they're charging this much and they provide even less than we do. Their portions are smaller. They provide less whatever items, less quality, less whatever. And we are charging less and providing more. So why don't we at least go up to the market? That's not the only thing you should be doing, but you can do that in a day and make those changes by literally just
Absolutely.
You can look online, you can go into the restaurants, you can take a look at their menu, you can do a whole bunch of stuff, but literally just do that. And that'll give you a good insight as to what you should be doing. So at least that's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. I would say this, and I don't want to miss it, so I just want to throw it in here. Here's the other thing that you can do very quickly when it comes to your pricing. This is maybe arguably a little bit more costing, but when we're talking about looking at plates, here's something you can do today. You can take your order guide or your list of products that you buy, and you can take it right back to your distributor, right? Assuming you're working with a distributor, which I always recommend. You can take it to them right now, cut, paste it, copy it, whatever, send it to them and say, hey, I need you to do the best pricing you can on these items. And if there are items on there that we can move to, let's say, a branded product. So if you're with US Foods has branded US food products or preferred vendors where they get better pricing. So if you're buying, I always use mayonnaise for whatever reason. If you're buying Hellmann's mayonnaise, but now US Foods has their, Hellmann's is a preferred vendor, but they sell it under a different label. It's still Hellmann's mayonnaise. It just costs less. So those are the kinds of things that you can do, taking them back to the distributor and saying, hey, listen, I need 3% back from these items.
Yeah.
These are the volumes I sell. Give me your best.
Yeah. And this would fall under the product side of what we're talking about. So that is number 2, which is the product. So looking at that, how can we take the same items we're getting? How do we get them cheaper, right? We're not saying to lessen the quality, but how can you either do better vendor agreements? How can you go and bargain a little bit harder? Or if there are product switches that you can do, that's not going to have a drastic effect on quality, why not do that, right? There are other vendors that have similar things that, and that's the kind of question that we have to ask ourselves. Is our product, number one, priced appropriately, but also are there ways we can make that product better or the cost better on it? Now, another side of product that I think is really, really crucial that you can do today is literally make sure everyone is actually portioning properly. So this is, I know as soon as I say portioning, everyone's like, oh, of course they're portioning right. But I'm going to tell you, after employing thousands of people, that does not happen all of the time. It's something as simple as, let's say the wrong scoop gets put out in the morning and you're portioning whatever it is. For my case, cheese was a big one that we overportioned. But you have the wrong scoop. Well, guess what? They're just going to use the wrong scoop that entire day until someone switches it out. And all of a sudden your entire day might be overportioned. We actually had this one client who had this plate of nachos that was like $15 or something like that. And they had this one guy who had like massive hands. This guy was like 7 feet tall and he was just this big dude. And whenever he made the same plate of nachos, he was like fistfulling the cheese on there, fistfulling the steak. And he was making these like gigantic nachos. And so when we went in and audited all the stuff, he basically was like once they found out, they're like, how come this nacho that's coming out of the kitchen is double the size of the other ones? Like, we are losing money every time we sell that item the way that he's portioning it. So, but people loved it. And so they bought it when he was working. And so they're like, okay, well, let's sell those nachos, but we have to adjust the price on it, right? Because there's no way that it makes sense that we're losing money on this thing every time we sell it. So we have to make sure things are portioned correctly. Easiest way to do this is to literally just watch what comes out of the kitchen. And in your recipe cards, How do we train people? How many ounces should be in a burger patty? How many ounces of fries should be on every plate, for example? And we've got to know those numbers. And if your team doesn't know what the numbers are, then what are you doing? You're clearly not training them. We used to actually test our people on the menu. Hey, if someone orders this, what are the toppings on it? We would literally test them. And it would, we'd have it all written down, but we would test them like, how many slices of bacon go on this? And they'd be like 5. And then, and some of them would get it wrong. And I'm like, you've been here for a year. How do you get that wrong? You know what I mean? You should know this stuff. Another trick that I used to do from a sandwich perspective, so we would literally have, rolled pita sandwiches that we would make. And so it's funny, I took a little, it was a faxable order form back in the day, but it would be like a fake Uber Eats order now is what I would do. And I just had like a vegetarian one because I didn't want to portion the meat out on it and have it cost me a lot. Because basically what I did was I took this fake order and I went to every staff member. I'm like, hey, can you make this order right now? They're coming to pick it up in 3 minutes and I need it done. So I had them make it. And then I had them literally hand it over to me, and then I put it in the fridge and I put their name on it. And I had every staff member do that throughout the entire day. At the end of the shift, we weighed them all. They all had the same toppings, but tell me why were some of them double the weight of the other ones for the same exact product? So there was a difference in consistency because literally your profits are in the hands of your employees. And that's one thing that we have to understand. And if you think that, because I'm there, I know everything's portioned properly. Well, what about when you're not there? Right? What happens when you're not there? Those are the types of questions that we have to ask. So number one, is the product going out properly? Can we get any discounts on the product that we're purchasing to make that less? Or should we be swapping some ingredients that might be cheaper price, but still maintain the quality? So those are all things that we need to think about when we think about product. Those are 3 easy ones. So Nathan, any others to add to that section?
Well, I mean, the biggest one I would add is, and you said it, when I went in and audited the food that's coming up, well, why do you have to audit it? Right. So I'm going to say this. So in my restaurants, and this took me decades to figure out, by the way, I built into the routines for my managers a very simple system, just a line check is what we called it. And they would literally walk down the line and ensure the right tools were in place. And this is assuming we've tested and we have recipes, right? But they would walk down top to bottom, left to right, just like we read a book, and inspect every ingredient for a few different things: quality, profit control systems, and stock levels, right? If you stock too much, you're going to waste it. If it's not the right portioning tool, like you said, they're going to overportion it. So inspecting what you expect when it comes to the product that's coming out of your restaurant is absolutely everything. And it can't just happen when you come in. Like you said, it can't happen then. We need a system for it. We need accountability, and we need a methodical, very clear process for evaluating that we're set up to execute the dishes right the first time. And then, yes, we should be auditing what's getting to the customers.
Yep.
But I always prefer to hit that before that point. What can we do to ensure it will be perfect, rather than look at what's already coming over the counter?
Yep.
Or in conjunction with, I should say.
Nice. No, I love that. And so those are a few tips you can take right away. And again, here's the one thing that I want everyone to understand is that in your business, there's no silver bullets. There's just hundreds of golden BBs, right? So it's a small change here, small change there, and all those changes add up to really, really big things over time. And there's no one thing that's going to magically fix your business. It's about tightening in 100 different places. And that's what will eventually create those results. All right. So let's talk about scheduling. What do you think are the biggest changes someone could make in the next 7 days in their scheduling to put more money in their bank account?
Ooh, the next 7 days. 7 days is a lot of time when it comes to looking at your schedule, in my opinion. I mean, I would literally start with what we call a productivity evaluation. So as simply as taking a look at how many hours did we spend, over the last, let's say, take it by week. Let's look at least 2 weeks minimum. We look at the last 2 weeks, every hour, what were our sales? Every hour, how many hours were we spending on labor? Okay. So $200 in sales, 4 hours of labor. So, 4 people working that full hour. Building an evaluation like that and looking at where did productivity, I should say it like this. When we look at that, we can take the hours that we've spent in labor, the sales that we had, divide the hours into the sales and create a very simple metric called a productivity metric, or a dollar per man hour. Both the same thing. Are able to look at every hour of every day over the last couple of weeks. And that sounds like a lot, but it's relatively simple data to put together. When we can see that, we can start to see where our productivity is the lowest and when it's the highest.
Yeah.
When we're getting the most bang for our buck. And if you can do that and then cross-reference that with your schedule tomorrow, you don't have to go and change people's rates of pay. We can literally start to look at, should they start at 4 or should they start at 4:15? If I have 3 people ending at 6, could one end at 5:30, one end at 5? You know, I have and this is what I would say as probably the biggest piece is I would look at your busy days, because this is the most common thing I see from people writing schedules, is that Friday and Saturday, we just schedule almost everybody we can in case we get busy, right? Is it appropriate? Do you need to schedule 11, 12 people for this 1 hour? Prove it. Go look at the numbers, compare it to the other numbers you run, maybe on a Wednesday at a peak time. Look at your Friday. What were your sales versus your hours spent? And does it make sense?
Yep. Look at the last 4 weeks.
How many bodies?
Yeah, look at your last 4 weeks. Is that normal? Or are we just staffing and it's not likely to get busy? You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that we have to take into account. One of the biggest things I see is that people actually just write the same schedule week to week, but don't evaluate the changes in their labor. And so what you kind of have to do is take a look at your last couple weeks and roughly know where your trends are, and then understand in this season, like let's just say, is June going to be busier than May for my business? And if it is, then knowing you'll probably go up a little bit, so you can err on the side of caution. But all of a sudden, maybe if October is slower than September, and you're writing schedule for that, you want to look at your last 4 weeks and understand if it's going to trend down, you want to cut a little bit more. And if you have the choice to put 3 people or 2, maybe you go with 2 instead of 3 in that position. You know what I mean? So we want to start looking at what's been happening, and we want to adjust our schedule based on that. And that's just a really, really important thing to do. I see so many people just write the same schedule, right? They just base it off of the previous week, and they don't necessarily know whether they should have that many people. Because again, to your point, if you know what people are able to handle, if all of a sudden you're able to handle $200 per person, per person scheduled during a peak period, and then you have places where it's $50 per person productivity, all of a sudden, well, hey, maybe we should cut some people there and maybe add them to when it's busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's reallocate that, because, maybe you need a few less people scheduled on Monday, but you need more on Friday, where all of a sudden your service starts to suffer and your ticket times go up. So looking at your schedule that way is extremely important. So just understanding that part about your labor, and just also understanding another key factor. And this is one that I always tell people, is that 2 people can be more productive than 3. And the reason I say that is because in relation to their productivity levels. So let's say, for example, in my business, our kind of sweet spot was about $90 to $100 per person. That was kind of our sweet spot for productivity. But if I noticed if it went below that, and I say had 3 people scheduled, but we really only needed 2, what ended up happening is everyone else collectively did less, because there was more people there. They all slowed down their pace, right? And then what did they start to do? They started to do more of this. They started to talk a little more. They started to be more social. And again, cool, it's fun to be social and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they were more likely not finishing the things they needed to do. There's a correlation. If you have higher labor, less things will get done. And I've, again, run multiple restaurants through almost 20 years. And I always found that when labor was too high, there was also a correlation of everybody complaining that they weren't staffed high enough, and the cleaning duties didn't get done, the prep didn't get done properly, all of those things didn't get done, even though our labor was higher as a percentage. And it's simply because we were overstaffed, so everyone leveled down their work. So let me ask you a question. If I'm sitting there with you and Nathan, I say, hey, I need these 10 cambros of tomatoes prepped, and I need it done in the next 30 minutes. I need you to get that done. Or if I say, hey, Nathan, I need these cambros of tomatoes prepped. There's 10 of them. It's been pretty slow. So if you can just have them done by the end of the day. Which one of those is going to cause people to work faster? right?
Oh, every time the 30 minutes was
Yeah.
always got to be a target.
100%, because people change how they work to adapt to the scenario. And so if the scenario is a slow one, they're going to adapt their work to that. Your job as a leader is to make sure they don't have to make that choice, right? That's your job as a leader. So that's just a little thing. And I've noticed it in every situation. Every time labor creeps up, everyone starts complaining because less gets done because people just work less hard every time. So a couple things you can do on that for scheduling. Those are the biggest ones. Literally figure out where your labor's going. Do you need it there, and start adjusting and keep adjusting it based on your sales. Just because you always have 4 people on Fridays doesn't mean you always need 4 people, right? Maybe you need 5, maybe you need 3. Let the sales tell us that, right? Let's have a data-driven schedule. Okay. Now let's talk about inventory a little bit, because everybody's got products sitting on their shelves, and everybody's probably got something that a manager misordered and has been sitting there for 6 months. Like one time they ordered a case of like 12 things of salt instead of like an individual like kilogram of salt or whatever it was. Anyway, that sat in my store for years, that salt. Like, because we didn't use a lot of salt in my business. It just wasn't something. We were more healthy. Like, people didn't add a lot of salt to their products. That sat there forever. I'm pretty sure I still have one in my house upstairs. So point is, like, there's money sitting on your shelf. So let's walk through some inventory things that we can take into account to put some money in our pocket right away.
Okay, so here's the biggest thing with inventory.
Hey, real quick, what if you could identify thousands in hidden profits, optimize your food and labor costs, and know exactly what moves to make next to grow your restaurant business, all in less time than it takes to drink your morning coffee? That's exactly why I created the Restaurant Weekly Financial Tracker. It's free and available on the link that's in the description. Grab your free copy now and focus in on your restaurant's profitability today.
Do you have an order guide? Do you have a plan? Do you have some sort of definition that can be easily followed for something like cheese, right? You mentioned cheese is overportioned in your restaurant. So if we can solve the portioning issue, like we talked about, have it adhere to the recipe, portioning is working. Well, here's the next thing about inventory. If we solve those things, inventory should ultimately be coming down. Inventory should be almost crystal clear, should be based on an order guide, on a system that should start with historical ordering, but should also move to an ideal ordering system. So I guess what I would say, so in the example of your salt, right? So what it makes me think is, what item code did they order? What pack size did they order? Yep. When did they order it? And why did they order it? And it's as simple as that. If we can literally say salt by this pack size, this code, this is the code that's ordered, here's how much we need. And deriving what we need is a whole nother thing we won't be able to get into on this call. But if we can define that number, how much do we have? And what is the difference between what we have and what we've set as a par? Yep. If that doesn't exist, they're going to order what they always order. And I've heard that just like schedules, right? I always order 2 cases of chicken.
Yeah.
Well, why? Why do you do that?
Yeah.
If there's a case sitting in the cooler when you order a case, but you always order 2, hey, shocker. Stop ordering 2, just order 1. That's exactly what you need.
Yep. 100%.
Put that money, leave that money in the bank. Don't put it on the shelf.
Yep. Because that's in essence what we're doing. We're buying products, so we're putting our money on the shelves. And here's the thing. Our managers, without a proper system to do their ordering properly, will always default to over ordering. But here's the other part of it too. The biggest complaint I hear is they over order, but then they miss ordering the things that they actually need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I would hear this all the time. All of a sudden, I kid you not, we had our regional manager training a new manager at one of our locations, and our inventory level for our restaurant was somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, let's say $8,000, somewhere in that range. That's kind of what our inventory level was. So now, for our size of business, made sense. Might even be on the high side, to be honest. But on average, $8,000 whenever we did inventory. And then what happened was that she trained someone, and then the new person took over, and we had trained them and showed them. But I'll be honest, our system wasn't as good as it needed to be. And I would do what we train now if I was to go back and do it again. But at the time, we didn't have this great system to rely on. So it was relied on like, hey, look at what the pars are, then make your best judgment based on whether it's busy or slower. They always erred on the side of caution. So we basically got like an extra one of almost everything that we ordered. And within 3 weeks, we came back and inventory had went from $8,000 to $12,000. So again, that's $4,000 sitting in the, Cisco's bank account on our shelves instead of in my bank account. So it's a $4,000 drop in your cash position. And on top of that, we were doing a bunch of stuff just to meet the minimum order that we needed. And then we were ended up forgetting stuff. So we were running out of product because the manager, again, there was so much stuff that they couldn't even tell what they needed because there was product everywhere. And it literally took us a month to get it back down to what we needed to by the time we used everything. So one of the easiest things to do is actually start paying attention to what you're ordering and asking yourself, do I really need this? Because we did 2 orders a week. And it was like, will I run out of this before Thursday? That's the question you need to ask, right? If it's a core product, like for us, chicken was our number 1 seller. So obviously you might need a little bit more as a buffer on your main core product. That totally makes sense. But you don't need that on your sauce that you order once a month. You don't need that on your salt that's been sitting there for a year. Like you don't need it on some of those items that, let's face it, you're not going to run out of. So literally reducing your inventory and planning that better and actually having a system to track what you ordered and when and having much better par levels around it, that's something that could put money in your bank account very quickly. Again, inventory is not a long-term reflection of your food cost, but it will help in the short term. Because let me explain that, because I know people get confused when I say that. Because at the end of the day, unless the product spoils and goes bad, you can still use it. Let's say if you buy a bunch of frozen product, right? It's not going to go bad within 2 weeks, right? That's not going to be the direct contributor to your food cost over the long term, because once it's purchased, it eventually gets used for the most part, right? Unless you have a lot of perishable products that will not last. So that's not always the direct contributor to your food cost, but in the short term, it can absolutely help and put some more money in your bank account. Because even after you do this, like here's the thing. If you look at your yearly number and your food cost is up, it's not because of your inventory. Because you didn't continue, because, if you were $20,000 over on your food cost over a course of a year, then you'd have $20,000 of product sitting on the shelf somewhere, right? And you don't. So clearly there's an issue somewhere else. But I just wanted to say inventory is a way to put quick cash in your bank account. If you have fully stocked shelves, you could probably reduce some of that. You could probably skip an order, and you may be fine for some people. So that's definitely one way to do it.
I have one more. One more I want to add to that, because this can move the needle very, very quickly. Here's the reality of the people who are placing orders in a lot of restaurants. I can't say in all, but they don't have a relationship to a bank account. They don't understand that there's only so much to spend. They just think, if I don't order enough chicken, I'm going to have to go to the store. I don't want to get in trouble for running out of chicken, so I'm just going to buy more chicken. That's their relationship to a budget, right? No relationship. So if you want to really move your food spending around an order guide and around inventory levels, start with a budget. If you sell, let's keep the math simple. If you sell $1,000 worth of food in a week and you want your food cost to be 30%, we have $300 to spend. That's it. Yep. There's not 301 and there's not 299. I want you to spend $300. Now, without something like an order guide, listen, you go set that up tomorrow with no plan for it, and you're going to run out of something, right? Because you don't know where to go. If we have an order guide and we say, this is the budget, when they see those things where it says, my par is 1 case of chicken, instead of in that moment thinking, well, I'm just going to order 2 because I don't believe the par, so I'll just order 2. Now, knowing they have a budget in place and that somebody is going to hold their feet to the flame around that spend target, they might think twice. My par says 1. I am just going to get 1. I'm going to follow my plan. I'm going to stick to the plan to keep my spending below the level that I have.
And then if you need more than that, then the par should go up.
That's right.
That's
the formula.
Yeah.
You run out, change it. You have too much, change it.
Yeah.
But start with a budget, because again, in my opinion, the relationship to the idea of an unlimited bank account for anybody except the owner is there.
Yeah.
And we got to break that mold.
Yeah. Oh, you guys do lots of sales. Yeah. But bank account often says otherwise
That's right. $1 million a year. There's money in the bank. Well, there's not really.
Yeah.
That sounds like a big number, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Next one is upselling. Now, this is a really, really simple one because ultimately everyone thinks, oh, I need more sales. I need to get more customers, right? Well, there's really only three ways you can get more sales in a restaurant. You can either get new customers, right? You can get your existing customers to buy more, and you can get your customers to come back more frequently. It's really only three ways. And so we have to look at the different ways we can do that. Now, the downside of getting new customers is it's costly and they're new and they don't know if they're going to like you. So it usually takes offers and some word of mouth and a bunch of other stuff to try and get them in there. But your existing customers that are already coming in, how simple is it to literally just get them to buy more, right? Because they're already there. They already like your product, right? They're the easiest people to sell. Someone, if they already love what you do, just get them to do more or come back more often. And literally there's almost zero cost to doing that. There's no ad spend on it. It is pure ROI, right? But most of our servers, most of our employees don't do that. Why don't they do that? Well, that's a great question that we need to address. So a couple things we can do. One of them, the way that I see it, is we need better training for our team, right? So when is the last time, let me ask you this, all the owners out there, when is the last time you role played a conversation about upselling a menu item with one of your servers or someone who is, if you have a quick serve, is on a cash register? When's the last time you role played conversations with them on how to handle it? When's the last time you did that? My guess is you either have never done it or it has been a long time since you've done it, since they were initially first training, right? Most people don't do that because they are uncomfortable with it or feel like it's more work, right? That's one of the main reasons. So that's a hesitation. That's because they're just not familiar, they're not comfortable, they're not going to do it. No matter what you say, if they're not comfortable, they're not going to do it. And you could sit right beside them and be like, you have to have this conversation. They're still going to avoid it, right? So practice. Practice makes perfect. We know that. Whether it's, shooting basketballs, practice makes perfect. Doesn't mean I can shoot basketball any better. It's been a long time. But point is,
you haven't been practicing, Andrew.
I haven't been practicing. I actually tried to jump up and grab the rim of a net like I used to when I was younger and I played basketball. Let's just say it doesn't work as much 20 some years later. I cannot jump as high as I could 20 years ago. But anyway, that's an aside. I'm glad no one got that on film because it was embarrassing. So let's move on to the next piece of upselling. One of the things we've got to do is actually incentivize people to do it. Yes, servers should be incentivized by their tips, but sometimes that's not always enough. So what about having an upsell competition around a particular item? And we literally will track the results because people will do more what's measured. It's like what gets measured gets accomplished is the old saying, right? So if we start measuring how many times you're upselling this 7-layer chocolate cake, well, let's take a look at that. And every time Susie sells 7-layer chocolate cake, Mark goes on the board. And whoever sells the most at the end of the night gets a little bonus or gets a big gold star or gets to have a trophy for the week. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. However they're motivated, that all works. But literally, how do we incentivize them to do that and get them to practice it? Now, another way that we typically like to do this is we try to self-accountabilize. That's going to be the word I'm going to make up, and we're going to roll with it. But here's how we did this in a quick serve environment. I'll translate this to a full serve in a second. But we had a rewards program, and no matter what, our team, even though it was part of the script, even though we had trained them on it, even though they were supposed to ask about joining the loyalty program, they often missed it. Even when we were standing there like listening in on it, like, hey, you missed it. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll do it next time. And then they didn't. So here's what we did. We literally put a sign in front of the cash register that says, if we don't ask you about our loyalty program, you get a free cookie. And we had a cookie display right beside there. And they're delicious cookies. I wish I had one right now. But here's what happened. The first time someone gets called out by a customer for not asking that question, it introduces like shame into the conversation because it's like, hey, you didn't ask me, you got to give me a free cookie. And then yes, they didn't have to pay the cost of the cookie, but it was still the embarrassment and then the extra effort of them having to go and then get the cookie and bring it out and give it to them. And then, the customer kind of like, giving them a hard time about it. That was accountability introduced just on a regular basis by our customers. So once that happened for the first time, our loyalty members skyrocketed simply because everyone was like, man, it's less work to ask this question than to actually have to get them a free cookie. That's the reality. Even when I was there, and I'm the most incentivized person that there was to ask that question. And then I was like, I don't really feel like it today. Oh man, the goddamn sign is there. Okay, fine. You want to join our loyalty program? Like, so fine, I have to do it now because the freaking sign is there, and there's no way around it. So for a full serve, you could have this as a table tent. You could have this posted at different places in your restaurant. If your server doesn't ask you about this specific appetizer, that's the accountability that we're talking about. So that is a really, really easy way. So again, role play it, practice it, have a competition, but then introduce this external accountability to it. And those are ways that can grow. Because let me tell you this, let's just say you have, 100 customers in a day. If each of them adds an extra $2, that's an extra, like to their average order, that's an extra $200 in sales. And over the course of the year, let me get my calculator here. $200 times 365 is $73,000. So literally all it takes is a very small amount, and not everyone's going to say yes, but adding on that appetizer, adding on that dessert, adding all those things. Now, here's also my recipe as well. And this is a pretty simple one. Get their order for dessert before when you take the rest of the order. That's something I would do, because when you're stuffed from your food, do you want dessert? Then how many people are like, oh, I'm too stuffed? If you already ordered, if you came to the table and said, hey, Nathan, we've got this 7-layer chocolate cake, but honestly, we often run out of it. You need to order this now if you want to get it. I 100% recommend getting it. It is to die for. Do you want me to just put that order in now so we can set those aside for you? Like something as simple as that. And then at the end, they're too full. Hey, do you want me to box those up for later for you? Easy as that, Yeah. And so just secure that sale when people are hungry. Because picture this, picture you're in the desert and you're walking through and someone says, hey, Nathan, you're really thirsty. Do you want a bottle of water? You're going to be like, yes, I don't care what it costs. Give me a bottle of water because I'm dying of thirst. But once you have that first bottle of water, you go, hey, you want another bottle? They're going to be like, no, I just had
I don't need it as bad.
I don't need it as bad. It's not as big of a thing. So we don't want to let, people's stomach sizes, basically affect your upselling. There's a way to do that. And so and to be honest, the amount of times that later on, after we have that dessert and it's to go, a couple hours later, you're feeling a little bit peckish. You're like, oh man, we have that dessert to eat. Always happy about it. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. So we don't have to overthink it, but we should sell at the time of greatest need. And that's when people are hungry. So that's what we should be doing. So there's a couple of different ways to take a look at upselling. So Nathan, anything else to add on that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I would add. I think you touched on some of it, but here's my biggest piece. If your staff doesn't know what the upsell opportunities are, we could talk about this all day, right? Yep. If somebody orders fries, what's the upsell? Is it gravy? Is it cheese? If you're in Canada, like I am, you're going to upgrade them to a poutine. Yep. Most people have no idea what that is. But
cheese and
gravy. If they order a burger, or you want cheese on that. You think about any time that you have ever gone to, I always think of McDonald's, right? You go to McDonald's and they literally ask you every time, do you want to supersize that? Maybe they don't do it anymore.
They don't do that anymore. Because, well, at least not where I am. I don't think supersize exists anymore.
I don't think it does either. I think it's just large.
They used to. Did you want to supersize for like 5 cents? Like, it was like,
you're like,
of course.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. So, I always, in my conversations, I always use the gravy example, right? If you've been to a restaurant and you've gotten fries, if they're doing their job, most often somebody says, would you like gravy with that?
Or do you want the truffle Parmesan fries if that's something you have, right? I mean, who says no to that,
That's right. You're like, obviously I want gravy. Obviously I want the Parmesan truffle fries. Yes, I do. And then you don't train the staff to walk up and say, do you want Parmesan truffle fries for an extra $5. No, you don't say that. You just say, would you like this? And that's the thing. So if somebody orders a salad, what's the upsell? If somebody orders fries,
did you want chicken on the salad? Do you want steak on yours? Do you want shrimp on your salad? Like,
that's right.
There's always an upsell on everything.
Yeah. If we talk about it in terms of what can we do in 7 days, I would tell you right now, go look at every menu item you have and identify. And this is the bar as well. How do we upsell them to top rail? Or get them to a double or whatever. Go look at every menu item you have and identify what would the upsell on that item be. What would it be?
Oh, actually, I've got another thing to add in there too. Is say you're talking about drinks. You know, this one restaurant has like they've got like your regular pint, and then they've also got like this extra big size. I forget what they call it. Let's just say the restaurant was Andrew's. You know, so do you want the Andrew's size on that? Start with the biggest one.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? And people are more likely inclined to be like, yeah, that sounds good, as opposed to like, do you want like the small or medium? Like, you just start with that. Do you want the Andrew size? Yeah.
Hey, and listen, people think about this all the time in terms of, let's say, I don't know, dinner full serve. That can feel limiting. I would tell you, you think about it like a breakfast place. You come in, you order bacon and eggs, you get some hash browns. Hey, would you like hollandaise sauce on your hash browns? Oh, you're getting a coffee? Can I start you off with a big glass of orange juice? Start your weekend off? Whatever it is. There is an upsell opportunity for absolutely everything in every concept. And my point is if we haven't identified what those items are or when to speak about them, then the how we speak about it doesn't even matter, because we may not identify every opportunity.
Yeah. And then we need to go and train people, and then we need go and hold people accountable to it. And here's another thing that actually another guy told me this, and I totally forgot about it until right now, but I if it's not in our training already, we should put it in our training, by the way, Nathan, adding it to the list of the project here. But who is our most profitable server? Right?
That's right.
And
server metrics.
So literally tracking the average ticket of each individual server, right? Because they should all have a code. They should all be punching in their orders. So who is your most profitable server? And here's a question. If you have that on your POS, do you share that info with your front of house team?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question, right?
So,
because if you don't, all of a sudden, this person's high, they're making the most money. Well, hey, how do I do that? What are they doing differently than what I'm doing? And who should you be scheduling on your busiest shifts?
100%. Listen, you're singing my song when it comes to metrics and differentiation. In a full serve restaurant, I'll just use this as the example. In a full serve restaurant, differentiation is everything. And that's like a ratification process to go from, say, a 2-table section to a 4-table section in the dining room.
Yeah.
You want to move from the dining room to a Friday lounge shift? Prove to me that you can do the fundamentals. Prove to me that you can upsell. Prove to me that, your service is amazing. All of those things shake loose when we identify what they are and how we measure them. In the upsell piece, listen, I would not ratify you or even consider you for promotion if your upsell metric wasn't at the very least to the mean or to the average of everybody on the team. If you're below that, no new shifts, no money shifts. And in fact, if you have the great shifts and you start to fall below that point, I'm going to take you out of that section and give it to the top performer.
Yep.
So talking about upselling, sure, but we have to measure it.
Because it's a meritocracy, right? Like at the end of the day, the business needs to make money. So you want to have your best people on your best times. Like that's the reality. Like you don't want to send your worst performer out at the best time because they're just going to do a mediocre job. There's actually a story about this of this real estate office who basically, and again, this is semi-applicable to restaurants, but basically it's real estate office, and the best leads were just being divided up equally between everyone. And so this guy talked to the CEO, was like, hey man, I'm your best guy. Give me the best leads and we will 5 times like your sales on this business. And they tested it out, just gave the highest qualified leads to the best person. And literally it exploded the business just by having the best people handling the best stuff and letting the other people who weren't as good grinding their teeth on the lower stuff. And it forces them to get better. Right. And then once they prove it, sure, then you can be part of that club. But at the end of the day, the business's job is to make money. So how best can we do that? And we have to do that by putting our best people at the best times where we can make the most. So if you want to put more money in your pocket in the next 7 days, these are the things that you should do. So Nathan, I had fun today. It was good. It was some good info.
Thanks for having me.
For everyone out there listening to this, take this advice. And again, if you want help implementing all of these things, we've literally helped clients go and add $10,000 to their bottom line in the next 4 to 6 weeks using very similar strategies to these that we talked about. So if you need a little bit more help in the execution of it, we'd be happy to talk more about it. We do this every day. But if not, keep listening, keep grabbing our free resources, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, everybody.
This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.